Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Cricket Podcast. I'm Nick, as ever, joined by Azza after a little hiatus. How are you doing, Azza? New horizons for you?
Yeah, I'm in. So the Indian is in England and the Englishman is in India now. So just for background,
it's funny how that
I'm the
works.
Indian who's in England at the moment. Big life change for me, and new things on the horizon, as you said. Some things remain the same though, which is that I've been doing exceedingly well at beating all of you at our fantasy.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go. Pipe down. Your second half, you have as many wins as some of the others, I think.
Yeah, as many wins as some of the others combined.
Not combined. That really is bigging yourself up.
I think what we're going to do is
my performances have improved tenfold, though.
I think that it was only up from where they were before.
Yeah, well, I mean, rock bottom is really, you can't really go below rock bottom, so
exactly.
So I disagree with your statement that you've wiped the floor with people. I mean, that's not your statement.
Look, we're gonna have an episode with the rest of the guys from our fantasy league, and we're gonna go through how everyone has performed, and then we can see for ourselves who's done what.
Sure. Okay. All right.
But at the moment, we're done with the league stages, and we're heading into the playoffs for the Indian Premier League. There's 4 teams. We know what the teams are. We know who's going to be playing in the qualifier. We know who's going to be playing in the eliminator. Well, the first of those two, anyway. And maybe that's a good segue to get into it.
Yeah, that is a pretty good segue. All right, let's start off with looking at the fact that we're coming up to the end of the tournament where, out of these teams, Chennai lost their last game and Delhi lost their last game. Obviously, they're playing each other in the eliminator. They're playing in Dubai. And we're pretty big on this podcast about when you're looking at fantasy cricket to look at things like recency bias, etc.
Yes.
So does that come into play at all, the fact that these guys have lost a game recently, or is it just pretty much understood that they more or less knew they were going to be in the top 2 spots, so they didn't really care about it much?
I'd say, look, from a cricketing point of view, with Delhi, I think Delhi looked very competitive even in the match they lost. There were some absolutely atrocious fielding mess-ups by them. Yeah, it just, something seemed off with those guys. I don't know if it was the ground.
I can find rhinoceros that field better than Prithvi Shaw.
I don't know.
And that's a letdown, right? You're going to lose fantasy points for dropped catches. So, if Prithvi Shaw comes in and
right?
Yeah, and if Prithvi Shaw comes in and only makes 15 runs and he drops a catch, then he's not worth picking anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's right. Prithvi Shaw, anyway, he blows hot and cold quite often. Did pretty well in the last match, but I like the way he plays because with players like Shaw, you need from a cricketing point of view, if he's going to give you 2 match-winning knocks in an IPL season, he's sort of paying back the franchise for what they're paying him.
Yeah.
From a fantasy cricketing point of view, it makes it more difficult. You just mentioned recency bias. Prithvi is one of those players where it'll be less. His recent form is less likely to replicate itself match on match compared to someone like Shikhar Dhawan.
Yeah, and I believe he's got a pretty. I mean, I don't know if we have the stats on this. We crunch a lot of numbers. I don't know if we have the stats on this.
What are you looking for?
Apparently, his UAE record is not that great in general in the UAE, both this year and elements last year.
Is that for Dhawan or Shaw?
No, that's for sure. And you're right. He is a bit of a Katy Perry kind of player. Hot and cold.
Yeah.
It's not great. He has moments where he shows. Is that
what he was talking about, right? In the song.
Oh yeah. Wait, yeah. I don't know. I don't really. It's a banger of a tune. I just sing along to it. I don't really know the meaning behind it, but it might be worth investigating.
It's pretty good lyrics, man, to be honest.
That could honestly, that could be an insights episode, because at this point,
Yeah, it
that's
could be.
probably going to be getting us more views and listens than cricket is.
Mm-hmm.
So we okay. Shaw blows hot and cold. Dhawan is a name that's been on a lot of sort of people's minds, because it was quite a shock, I think, for a few people that he wasn't even picked for the India squad for the World T20, given
Big
his record
shocker.
in the last 18 months.
I don't
So,
understand
what are
that.
your thoughts on Shikhar Dhawan? And then I want to move on to Chennai for a bit.
Yeah. So before we just quickly, because you were asking about the stats of Prithvi in the
True.
UAE for this season, in the 5 innings that he's played, he's averaging a paltry 18.6, 19 odd. He's had one good knock, which was the most recent innings he played, where he scored 48 of 33 at a strike rate of 145. Hit 2 6s, 4 4s, so that's 66 fantasy points in that Dream 11 points in that match. So if you had him in your team, good job. I'd say that recency bias, even with Prithvi Shaw, is still a thing, so you still want to keep an eye out on him. Now, you to get to your more pertinent point of Shikhar Dhawan, look, he's had a terrific season. He's coming on the back of now two good seasons. What I mean is a great IPL 2020 in the UAE last year. Also, he captained the Indian limited overs team in Sri Lanka, where he did pretty well as well, and he was good as captain. So, look, he's one of the most I'd say stable picks as a fantasy player, which makes him a good buy. He's around 9.5 points on most apps credits rather. So I think that's a good deal. 9.5 credits. Pretty sure.
No, I think that. And before we move on to Chennai, I've now had a quick glance, and apparently you do not lose points for fielding, which is good if you want to pick Prithvi Shaw, because you would lose a lot of points otherwise.
You don't lose points, but you don't gain the points that you could.
You don't gain points either. That's true. That's true. You don't gain those points. That's certainly true. When it comes to fielding, Chennai have a very good outfit. I think they're you know, maybe it's the yellow, but they all seem to be really good in the field. They're not carrying any passengers in the field. But
certainly,
who is it from Chennai in terms of the batting? Because we've started with the Delhi batting. Who are you looking at? I think the names are obvious, because it's the two names that have carried them through this tournament, I'd say. The young Indian and the veteran South African. But do you want to go into those guys a little bit, with, unless you've got a different two in mind? I think Moeen Ali will come into. Yeah, I think Moeen Ali is worth a discussion a bit later, in the same way that I think potentially Akshar Patel has now become a discussion for Delhi. But I'm looking more along the lines of right now. Gaikwad and Faf du Plessis.
So let's structure that in context. So Rituraj Gaikwad and Faf, again, they're two openers. So let's keep this in mind. We've just spoken about two Delhi openers. We're now talking about two Chennai openers. Now, for the game that's coming up, the challenge is that, are you going to be picking four batsmen who are all openers? The match is in Dubai. Now, Dubai it's a good wicket. It has something in it for everyone. You're hoping for about a 150 par score on that wicket with the first innings, and really, it's difficult to say which players to pick, given that. Depends on the kind of competition you're playing as well. So I'm just laying out the groundwork there, Nick, to get to what you were mentioning, because yes, it is really about three players who've been contributing with the bat. I'd say maybe four. For Chennai, it's Ambati Rayudu and Moeen Ali. Moeen Ali not so much in the second half, but Ravindra Jadeja has been great. So it's really these guys who've been carrying them, apart from the two openers, of course. Now it's I mean, Rituraj Gaikwad, it can't really say much about him. He's had scores of 88 from 58, 151 strike rate, 121 fantasy points on that one, 38 of 26, 10 of 12, but that's okay, 40 of 28, 39 of 34, and it keeps going. So I mean, he's had a century there as well of 152 points. A little bit of a lean patch. The last innings he scored was about 4 innings ago now, so it's a little bit of a lean patch. Keep that in mind. But he's been up there. Faf, on the other hand, sort of mirroring Rituraj in a way, um, because Faf had a bit of a lean start to his UAE tenure, but he's picked up over time. And the thing with Faf is that he really brings that tenacity and experience to the fray, doesn't he? So I'd be more inclined to pick Faf, especially given recent form. So what I'm saying basically, Nick, is four openers. Shikhar Dhawan and Faf du Plessis are your more bankable characters, and one out of Rituraj Gaikwad and Prithvi Shaw would be your sort of more risky pick.
Right. No, that makes sense, and I think the numbers back it up, and their performances this season sort of back it up. I'm mindful of kind of time and how we've approached this so far. So I want to take a little bit of a different approach for this little next mini segment of Delhi and Chennai. And let's just dive into, you give me a couple of other picks that we may not have mentioned from Delhi. And then I'll give you the same, and then you do the same for Chennai, and we can sort of round out our discussion. It's important we do it from a cricket point of view, with the realization for viewers and listeners that if you have the knowledge from a cricket point of view, it's just the application of this knowledge into the fantasy system, right?
Exactly. Very true.
That's what's really important. So why don't you start us off looking at Delhi, and give me maybe 2 or 3 players you're looking at, whatever you're comfortable with. I'm not really gonna push.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave Akshar Patel for you because you mentioned him, and I'm gonna mention one guy in particular, Avesh Khan. He's I think he's number 2 on the purple cap list at the moment.
Yep, he's behind the most unlikely purple cap holder in IPL
another
history.
Patel. This is Harshal Patel.
That's true. True.
And so Avesh Khan, and he's something that he's worked on, seems to be working. He's upped his pace, he's upped the intensity, fitness, everything looks good. So it's interesting because, look, Delhi, they would have thought that going into this season, Rabada is going to be the big man for them. But Rabada he's been good, but not in the same imperious form that he was in the last couple of seasons. So Avesh Khan is my sort of big player that sort of fantasy cricketers should be watching out for, because he's also not as expensive as someone like Kagiso Rabada. So just for reference, Avesh Khan has been averaging about 57 fantasy points in the UAE leg of the IPL. And in 2 games, he's had a century of fantasy points, 111, 105 points, which is terrific. I think he's been really good. So that's my pick, and I'm going to let you go for yours.
A quick word in there before you move on. Before I move on to discuss Akshar, you mentioned Kagiso Rabada. What about any mention for Nortje or not at all?
No, of course. Nortje, look, in the interest of time, I skipped him, but I can quickly give a mention to Nortje. He's averaging
it's just, again, for context. If you're and perhaps we'll get to this in 2 minutes, where I've done my Akshar Patel thing. We'll try to think of a on the fly combined 11 where I think we're probably both going to agree that we're more inclined to lean Delhi favored. So let me just quickly, my Akshar Patel bit is very brief. Recency bias is one thing. He has shown good performances lately. The last few games, he's really done well. His batting has not been up to maybe where he would like it to be, where the Delhi team would like it to be. He's averaging 6.5 in 10 games this season. But He has taken 15 wickets in 10 games. He's taken crucial wickets. He's good in the field. He seems to make things happen. He seems to be a player that I think you not only have to pick, but I think he's a very good captain or vice captaincy option, probably along with the player in this game that is most likely to be like him, which is Ravi Jadeja.
Yeah.
So I think
again,
Akshar Patel's worth considering as a pick for sure, but also as a captaincy pick potentially.
Yeah, just mentioning Akshar Patel, he's averaging about 54 points, Dream 11 points. Armik Nortje, on the other hand, similar though, but a little bit lower, and that's about 50 points, 51 points. Now, Akshar, of course, has something to offer with the bat, so I'd always put my money on a bowler, an all rounder who's picking up wickets and can
Correct.
also give you points with the bat, right? So that's really a no-brainer there. And yeah, I think that's Delhi covered.
I think that's perfect to move it. Yeah, I think that's perfect to then move on to probably the all-rounder team really in this competition. Which is Chennai.
And just before we move on to Chennai, one thing that we've got to keep in mind is that both teams have wicket keepers who are not in form at the moment. So maybe we finish the Chennai team and then have a quick discussion on wicket keepers.
I don't think we need a quick discussion, but I'll call you up on that when we go there.
Yeah. Fair.
So Chennai, as I said, they're the team of all rounders. Really, I mean they are more than that, but really they are really, their spine is Jadeja, Moeen, and DJ.
The DJ
Dwayne, not the Rock Johnson.
Dwayne, not the Rock Johnson. It's Dwayne the Champion Johnson, the champion. Yeah, that's right. And they've lost Sam Curran, by the way, they don't seem to be missing him all that much suddenly.
No.
So absolutely right. Some contributions by Rayudu. Of course, we've already mentioned Gaikwad and Duplessis. But I think we have to mention Nik, Shardul Thakur.
Okay.
He's sort of gone under the radar for a lot of pundits, experts in the season, but he's been really good. I'm looking at his average points in this UAE leg. He's averaging about 58 points. In the last 3 games, he's got 54, 68, and 91 points, and that's on the back of a lot of wickets that he's been picking up. So in this UAE leg, again, he's picked up 13 wickets. So don't discount Shardul Thakur. And look, he's also a cheap buy. He's gonna come for about 9 points, 8.5 credits or so. So you have to buy him. That's my big.
That's your big Chennai pick. Okay, I wanna quickly then, maybe on the fly, put together a quick team. If we had to do a team for this game, a one-off team.
Yeah.
I think Rishabh Pant is your wicketkeeper. That's the no-brainer because you have to pick one wicketkeeper.
You have to pick one.
And let's be honest, we know friends, etc., who will back Thalla. How do you pronounce? I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry if I'm offending anybody. But
I don't know either.
It's pretty telling that he seems to think his next season in the IPL may even be as a coach or in that capacity. I think that's quite telling. Rishabh Pant, for all his perhaps lack of form, is still the player that has to be the keeper out of the two.
Yeah.
From a batting point of view, give me 3 batsmen from either team that you would make if you had to pick just 3 batsmen.
So just quickly, I mean, we do say that Rishabh Pant's not in form, but he's still giving you about 41 expected points. It's not half bad. Okay. Now, 3 batsmen, do you mean in total from both teams or from each team?
No, yeah. So if obviously you can pick more than 3 batsmen, more than 1 wicketkeeper, more than 1 all-rounder, more than 3 bowlers. But I want us to show let the listeners, viewers know that we've got 3-1-1-3-1-3 as a base, And,
Yeah.
of course, then it's optional to fill in other players
Yeah,
in
yeah,
between who
yeah.
you might think are X-factor players. So give me
Yeah.
3 batsmen looking at both teams.
Look, I'm picking Shikhar Dhawan. This match is in Dubai. He has a good record there. Ruturaj Gaikwad and Faf du Plessis. Those are my 3 batsmen. What's yours?
Yeah, it's
Any
exactly
changes?
the same. I
Okay.
don't see any changes on that front.
Ambati
As
Raidu
to
might get a look in, right?
No, I don't. I am more inclined to actually pick Prithvi Shaw
Mm-hmm.
over Raidu, just because I feel that that's kind of like the risky pick.
Yeah.
Whereas in an all rounder sense, I'm really looking at Jadeja. If I have to pick one all rounder, I think again that's pretty much a no brainer.
Sure.
What about you from a bowling point of view?
So bowling, as I said, Shardul Thakur, absolutely. And then I'm a bit torn, but I'm probably picking Anrik Nortje, and then I'm looking at any one of either Kagiso Rabada or Josh Hazelwood.
Okay, so no Avish
But
Khan.
I'm probably sort of going towards Hazelwood at this point.
No Avish Khan then.
So yeah, that's the one I'm a bit torn on. Is it Avesh Khan, Rabada, or Hazelwood? Um, Difficult to say. Actually, probably Avesh Khan. You've changed my mind there.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. If you can
The
avoid picking
the
Australians,
only
it's good
reason
for
why I
looking
wouldn't
at
want to
team.
pick, yeah. Look, we have to point to the listeners also that there's 7-4 is the maximum 7 players you can have from any given team. So just be mindful of that.
So I mean, for me, I think it's pretty straightforward. As I don't pick Shardul Thakur either. I mean, you made a very compelling argument, but I've performed well in Delhi games because I've gone for the trio of the Delhi fast bowlers with Nortje, with Kagiso Rabada, with Avesh Khan. So these are all players that sort of have done well for me when I've played, and I feel
Yeah,
like they've become really good at figuring out how to bowl throughout various parts of the innings. So for me,
yeah,
that's my pick of 3.
fair.
Um, Anything else
Um,
you'd like to add, Azza,
yeah. So
towards these teams?
yes,
The ground, perhaps. We're playing at Dubai.
yeah. Just a few final things. Both these teams have some very talented all-rounders, as we've already mentioned. In particular, we're looking at Moeen Ali, Ravindra Jadeja, and Akshar Patel. Also, don't forget the champion, DJ Bravo. So that's 4 all-rounders. I wouldn't fault someone for picking 3-3 of both batsmen and bowlers. That's 6, having the one wicket keeper, that's 7, and then 4 all rounders, that's
Yeah,
11. And
yeah,
that's,
I think that's a really good shout.
yeah,
Especially, I mean,
that's,
there's question marks over Bitstoin's fitness as well.
yeah. So Stoinis might be back, but most probably not. They wouldn't want to change that formula at this point anyway. So that's my
And
last.
just a note, yeah, yeah, no, and that sounds good. And sort of as before we end this episode, my sort of note to the listeners is please don't think your teams are set in stone, because I think we saw at the end of yesterday, Shikhar Dhawan had some ice on his shoulder. These things are worth looking at. Teams are announced right before the end. We've mentioned a bunch of players. Make sure they're playing. Um,
Yep,
and make multiple teams. It's always a good bet, and it's going to be a
yep,
good game. It's going to be a good game. Dubai has been a ground that favors chasing. Um, it's become a pretty decent wicket to play on. It's not as bad as Sharjah, which we'll cover in the next episode when we look at the eliminator. But just these are the little things to know if you want to win
yeah,
fantasy points.
that's
The
right.
little nuances. Um, on that note, Azza, I'm gonna bid you farewell and
Nice one.
catch you for the next episode. And good luck, listeners and viewers, and good luck, Delhi Dare. Yeah, oh, I was going to say Delhi Daredevils. That doesn't exist anymore. Delhi Capitals, who we are very shamelessly biased about wanting them to win, and we hope they do.
Yeah, unashamedly biased. So yeah, I had fun with this one, Nick. Thanks.
Same. Cheers, Azza, and
Cheers.
thanks for everybody who's tuned in. Take care.